Yes, definitely. I mean, Prayut had never come to power out of his own electoral popularity. It was because he was able to strike deals with other more conservative parties to form coalition government. So I think it will be likely another, perhaps a landslide victory again by the opposition Pheu Thai party. But whether or not they could form a government is a separate story.
So this is the opportunity to bring about change. How do you think that might look like? Who should they vote for?
Younger people are much more likely to vote for Move Forward Party, which has been surging in popularity in the past 3, 4 weeks of campaigning. Many of them had voted before in the last election, but couldn't, get their preferred candidates or party to form the government. The opposition is likely to continue that popularity. Pheu Thai, having had its stronghold, is likely to probably be the most popular party again. But the question remains whether or not opposition parties who may together gain more votes than anyone else could form a government.
And even if Paetongtarn Shinawat's party wins, there's no guarantee that she will be the Prime Minister. The Parliament have to vote for their leader.
That's right. But the Senate is also another issue. The Senate members were appointed under Prayut's leadership previously, and in the last election, they all voted to support Prayut's leadership. So it remains a really big question whether the Senate would continue to do the same as they did previously.
You mentioned before about the other opposition party, Move Forward Party, which had some success in 2019 with many young supporters. How do you think it'll do in this election? Are the issues still pretty much the same that young voters are concerned about?
I think that on the political spectrum, they're probably one of the more progressive parties that Thailand has had. And of course, the stronghold remains young people, some of whom would be first-time voters and some of whom will be the second time. The party's popularity is riding on the backs of 2.5 years of sustained protests led by young people that really occurred in 2020. So we expect to see some of the popularity or popular support for the youth protests that began 2 years ago to continue to translate into votes for Move Forward Party.
Well, at the last election, some saw the race as skewed, with Prayut Chan-o-cha having an unfair advantage. Can you explain that to us and whether we could see a similar situation in this election?
Definitely. I think because the last election, the campaigning actually happened during the time that the military leadership was still in power. So there was more restrictions on campaigning and political freedoms in general in Thailand that compared to this time. I see more openings in terms of opposition parties being able to campaign. Restrictions that are applied to party campaigning has been applied across all parties, regardless of whether or not they're in opposition. So I think we have a bit more freedom this round for opposition parties to compete more fairly. But on when the election does happen, we will see whether or not there would be any irregularities that we observed in the last election happening. It's not likely to be at the same scale at all. We shouldn't be seeing a lot of secret voting ballots not be able to be monitored because they occur in military camps, but some of that might still continue to happen.
And what is voter turnout expected to be like?
It's likely to be high, and this has been seen by already record-breaking numbers of overseas voters that Thais living abroad, for example, in Sydney in particular, had been a surge in a number of them that registered their intention to vote, and early voting has already started. So we should see probably higher turnout than last time.
And what do you think the likely outcome will be? I know it's really hard to predict, but what do you think are the two most likely scenarios that will come out of this weekend's election?
The first scenario is that Pheu Thai is again winning the popularity vote. And the second scenario is that all the parties that are in that are part of the conservative political establishment have already made deals to form coalition governments together. The question this time that's different from the last election is that there are more parties that are in the middle, meaning that they could go either way. They could either side with the conservative political establishment or decide to join up with opposition parties like Pheu Thai or Move Forward Party that are likely together to win more votes. So I think the uncertainty really comes to, 4 or 5 mid to large size parties that whose allegiance could go either for more conservative political base or for more progressive ones.
And if it is the later option, how might a PTP-led government, for example, impact foreign policy, particularly where China is concerned?
It's unlikely to impact foreign policy with China in a major way. Thailand has been close to China economically for a very long time, and it's increasing its dependence on China as well. And going forward, if Move Forward Party could get some leeway into policy decision making, there might be a slight change to being a bit less supportive on certain issues. But overall, I don't think that Thailand's policy towards China is likely to change regardless of who comes to power.
Interesting times ahead. Dr. Aim Simpeng, thank you so much for talking to us about the Thai elections that are coming up this Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you.